what category are you guys in?
Just a punk band, really.
So, I mean, how do you regard the new wave of punk? Do you regard yourself as part of this?
Yeah, of course I do, yeah.
So, and how does that align with the old wave of '77? How are you different?
A lot were working class, they were all middle class.
That was all sort of big fashion thing then.
Right.
The fashion element's sort of gone out of it now, and it's more to do with music. It's more what it should have been.
Alright everyone, welcome to the first episode of Swearing Session. So I guess before I actually start this, I'll just go into like kind of a general idea of what this channel is supposed to be and what we're going to show and talk about here. So the idea for this actually came to me a while ago, but I really wanted to go over a lot of the second wave British bands on vinyl because they're actually really still affordable, most of them. And you don't hear much about them. Everyone's always talking about this $6,000 record from Michigan that, you know, the band made one record and, you know, it's unobtainium. But a lot of this stuff is like readily available. You can still find it, you know, with some exceptions, which we'll talk about. But and it's just great. I grew up on this stuff, and it's just always been there, you know, throughout my whole life. So I guess, you know, we'll just get started here. And well, actually, before we get started, I'll just talk about like how this video is going to work and how I'm going to set it up. So the first video is going to be on the singles from No Future, and then I'm going to do a second video that has all the LPs, compilations, and just kind of one-off weird stuff, split releases, stuff like that, foreign releases, things of that nature. Yeah, for this video, I'm also going to mention singles collections and compilations of the bands featured. For most of the actual releases, I'm only going to show the original No Future single. I say that as there's 4 records sitting in front of me, but this is a special one. So with that said, I guess we'll just get started. So this is the first release that came out on No Future Records. So there's 3 original pressings of this. The 4th one is a reissue, which we'll talk about why that's there at the end. But the first release is this one. This is the original press, and it has a rubber stamp on the label, which you can see there. This was released in August of '81, I believe. Came with a fold-out insert here, or a fold-out sleeve, I should say. All this artwork was done by Mackie, the bass player. He's right there. I believe his real name is Neil, so shout out to Neil. Yeah, so this original press is actually one of the more expensive No Futures you'll find. You can see here, these were all done by hand, and they're just mismatched. there's definitely a lot of these out there that are floating around that are probably fake. And the reason for that, well, it has to do with the second press, but I think a good way to actually tell is if you see this original insert, you can actually see where, oh, that's probably for the other side. You can see where they just stamped them while they were in the inner sleeve. So if you have one of these original presses, like, you know, I clean all these and put them in new ones, but I saved this just because it shows the, you know, the original stamp. See how it lines up? So yeah, that's the first press. Before we get into the second press here, we'll just talk about. So Blitz was from Manchester. Well, actually, they were from a town outside of Manchester called New Mills, so it was sort of like a little satellite town. They formed in 1980, and their first show was actually opening for Discharge, who also hadn't really blown up yet. So basically, right after they formed, they did a 5-track demo, and they sent that to No Future as soon as they, No Future put an ad out in a Sound music paper, and they sent it in, and they liked it. And by that time, Blitz had already recorded the music that was on this with the intention of putting it out themselves, and No Future basically like picked it up. And yeah, I mean, the rest is history. This record like just blew up when it came out. It was huge, and it was so big, in fact, that first press we talked about, there was only 1,000 copies of that, because they figured, you know, who's going to buy 1,000 copies of this? And yeah, basically sold out overnight. So they ordered an additional 10,000 copies, which is this one here. So this one is pretty common, and you can find it all over the place. The outer sleeve is basically identical. I compared both of them, and I couldn't really see a difference between both of them. So I think they pretty much just continued the original pressing of 1,000, and but this time they were just blank white labels, and I write the A and B on it just because I actually listen to my records, and any record that has a white sleeve or a white label I just mark so I know. But that's why the first press, I think, is, I wouldn't say often faked, but it could be faked, because you could just get one of these second presses and the etchings are the same and everything, and you can just, you know, make your own stamp and basically pass this off as a first press if you wanted to. I mean, it's not, if you really want a first press, I think they're around $100. This one I think is about $30. So, I mean, if you really want to spring for a first, I don't know why you bother faking one of these, but you know, anything for a buck with some people. Okay, so the third pressing here is pretty boring. They actually have a real label this time, and this came out a little later in 1982. So the first release was 1981, and this was the third press, which by 1982 you could tell they started changing the materials of things, and this one's a little beat up. But this is just a regular pocket sleeve, so there's no insert or, you know, flip out cover or anything cool like that. They basically just pressed it again on this, and that was that. So between the three of those, allegedly there was 30,000 copies pressed. Now, the only real solid numbers I could find were 1,000 of the very first press, and then 30,000 spread out between the other two. So I assume it's 10 of the first and maybe 20 of the second. I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot more of the second press than the third press, to be honest. So I really don't know how many were actually pressed, and I'm not sure that, you know, the numbers on that are accurate. So so next we'll talk about this guy. So like I said, I'm only including the original presses in this, but I wanted to put this in here because this is actually really cool. This is a 12-inch, and it's got the entire first, it's just basically a reissue, but for some reason they added Never Surrender on the B-side. So it's got an extra song on it, but this is on a 12-inch 45, and this sounds awesome. So if you can find a copy of this, it just sounds, it just blows your speakers out. It sounds so good. So I wanted to just put that in there just for the sake of that. I think this came out in 92. 93, 94, I forget. Early 90s when Blitz actually reformed, so they kind of put this out to, like, I guess, bring interest back to the band. I'm not sure, but so this was the first No Future release and the first Blitz release. So with that said, we'll go into the second release. So the second release is by another staple in British punk history, is the Partisans. So this was the Partisans' debut. There was two versions of this. It was released originally in September of 1981, so right after, about a month after the Blitz release. There's two versions of this. I'm not sure exactly when the second release came out. The first one is this like cardstock type material. So early No Future is all on these card type material, and then later on, as they started kind of hurting for money, you'd see them kind of switch to like more of a paper. So I think that second press, or the second version with the paper sleeve, is probably from 1982, if I had to guess. Mid 1982, I don't know. So the Partisans are an interesting band. They were from Wales, actually. So they formed in 1979, I believe, actually. Could be wrong on that, but they formed a while before they actually put a record out. And they recorded a couple demos, and the second demo, I believe, is the one that brought the band some attention, by Gary Bushell and Gez Lowry of Rising Free. They kind of like heard this demo and they were like, whoa, this band is going places. So they passed it off to some some record labels. No Future got a hold of it, and they wanted to put it out. I mean, obviously it's, you know, they were all like early teenagers, you know, so like songs of this caliber coming out of kids that young was just, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing, as was true with most of the second wave bands. You know, they were a lot younger than the first wave bands. So yeah, September 1981 this was released, and there actually was an insert with this. Unfortunately, mine is just a Xerox. You could see it was just photocopied, but whatever. A lot of these early No Future releases actually would come with inserts. They're very, very, very rare now. I don't think they were in all of them. I think maybe only the mail order copies got them. If anyone has any insight on that, yeah, that would be appreciated, because I don't think I have any of these early No Future records with the inserts, or with original inserts. But yeah, so this copy is actually kind of interesting because it's a mispress, if you notice here. It has the B-side labels on both sides. So it plays both sides normally, so it has all the songs, just they mismatched the labels, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, so that is number 2. So number 3 is actually a 12-inch, and it's still on the catalog numbers for singles, but this was basically a compilation of the massive amount of demo tapes that No Future had been receiving in the mail from all kinds of, you know, small bands across the country. They were just basically, like, every day they were getting hundreds or dozens of tapes, and they would have to sort through them. So we're going to talk about this more in depth in the LP video, just because this is going to be a long video as it is, so I figured I'd take this and put it over there. But a lot of these bands you would see later on in No Future. So Blitzkrieg, we're going to talk about. Violators, we're going to talk about. Sample, we're going to talk about. Attack, we're going to talk about. Crux, we're going to talk about. The rest of these bands we'll go over in the next video. One Way System's probably the biggest band to come off of this, other than the No Future bands, you know. So yeah, that's basically all. I guess I'll mention so there's this white label version, and then there's also a green label version. I think the covers are identical. I don't know. I don't have a green one to compare it, but I don't know which one came first, or if they were released at the same time or what. But so yeah, this is outstanding. I love this record. I mean, I love compilations in general, so I often stick to those. All right, so after A Country Fit for Heroes, we have another debut from what would be very famous band, Peter and the Test Tube Babies. So there's two versions of this. There's a white label, which I have, and then there's also a blue label. I don't know. Again, I don't know which one came first. Not sure. But I mean, this is another one of those records that's just like, you know, genre defining. So they were from Peacehaven, which is down near the coast. They had been on a compilation, I believe, before this, and they were actually on the first Oi compilation as well. So Gary Bushel's Oi the album, they were on that. And that was pretty much all they had done. And then No Future, I probably knew of them from the Oi compilation. And they basically worked out a deal and signed them. And this was actually January 1982, so this is the first record of the 82 era, I guess, technically. I've heard that some of these did have inserts. Mine does not have an insert. I mean, again, if anyone has any info on the No Future inserts, it would be pretty cool to know, because they're exceedingly rare. And most of the records that you see on Discogs, like you'll see the high-end price will be like crazy high. I'm pretty sure those would be records that still had the inserts in them. So, you know, all these are pretty affordable, but every once in a while you'll see one with like a crazy high-end Discogs sale price. So the next record we're going to talk about is Red Alert. So this is actually the first band that had put out records before they were on No Future. So before they were on No Future, they self-released one 7-inch, and it is probably one of the most expensive UK82 records out there. It was reissued, so these are two different reissues. This is I believe it's French, yes, Combat Rock. So this came out in the 90s, and they kind of made up this cover and they named it Border Guards. The original, I think, was just self-titled or inferred that it was titled Border Guards, and then this is a more recent reissue on Common People, and this one has a copy of the original sleeve. So yeah, this is a 4-figure record, if the original press of it. So one day I'll probably get one, but for now this is good. Anyways, back to this one. So these guys are from Sunderland, and they formed in 1979. Like I said, they already did those two records, so they were kind of already out and about. By the time this record came out, this was also in January 1982, this was released, so this is one of those, you know, also like Blitz, you know, mixture of punks and skinheads, so like double the sales potential. So there was only this one record, or only this one pressing of it, but there was a mispress. So there was a mispress where the B-side track was actually put on the A-side, which this one is. So it's the same songs, it's just, I believe Screaming at a Nation is on the A-side within Britain. So just interesting little mispress. I like stuff like that. So, okay, next we have another Blitz. So this one is February 1982, I think this came out. So this was their second release. This one is like mint. I don't know how. This record is just awesome. But only 2 songs on this, Razors in the Night and Never Surrender. So this again the artwork was done by Mackie on the cover. And so this was produced by a guy named Tim Bomber Harris. And he would come into play later on in the Blitz story. So we'll talk about him probably later in this video or the next video. But this record is just outstanding. I mean, this was like, the first record is great, but the production on this one just was way through the roof. I mean, they were just firing on all cylinders when they made this one. So that is their second release, and that's No Future number 6. So this was also licensed in Finland, so there's a Finnish copy of this. I obviously don't have a copy of that. I don't know if it came with a cover. I think it might have just been by itself. So yeah, that's just a little tidbit. That one's pretty expensive too, if I remember correctly. Okay, so number 7. So now we're gonna talk about Attack. So this is an interesting band too, and they were actually featured on that Country Fit for Heroes compilation. So this band, I mean, if you can tell, they had their influences, you know, who I guess, I mean, really this is, let's be honest, this is the Ramones, right? But whatever. So this band actually is interesting. They were also from New Mills, and the drummer Lindsay was Mackie from Blitz's little sister. So obviously they had, I don't call them a shoe-in at No Future. I mean, they're a good band, but they definitely had the connections to get signed. Yeah, so this record was there was only one press of this, and this was March of 1982. And this one, I'm wrong. This is the only one, I think the only one where I have an original insert for it. So there's the original insert, and it's got the lyrics and this little doodle on the other side. So, I mean, this record is, it's kind of almost dischargey in a way. Like it's really rough. It's not like the sing-along oi oi kind of chant like Blitz is. It's much more like driving, and it's more like basic and just brutal, you know. But this release was their debut. They had done a demo tape, which they pulled the song on Country Fit for Heroes off of. So yeah, there's only this one pressing, and yeah, this actually went pretty high in the charts when it came out, as did a lot of these releases. This one went, like, this was their first release, and I think it was up above, like, it was in, I don't know if it was in the top 10, but it went pretty high in the independent charts, you know, which is kind of weird to think like a record like this would sell so many copies. But I mean, it was just the right time and the right place for this type of music. So okay, so next we're going to talk about Blitzkrieg, and this is number 8, Oi number 8. This was March of 1982. This was the only release Blitzkrieg would do on No Future. They were more of an anarcho band, I guess you would classify them. I mean, they were kind of spiky still, but they weren't like, I wouldn't say they really were like total crass type band, but they were definitely that direction as far as like UK82 stuff type stuff goes. They also, their first release was on A Country Fit for Heroes. So basically, A Country Fit for Heroes set up No Future for like their next couple releases. So far we have 2 in a row that the bands came off of there. So this band was from, where were they from? They were from Southport. So it's like halfway up the coast between Liverpool and Blackpool. This band is really underrated. I mean, they only did 2 7-inches on their original run as a band, and I think they had some compilation appearances, but this band is great. It's not, like I said, it's not really like super crass style. It's definitely that direction, but there's something there for everybody, you know? I really like this record a lot. So this is probably the most political record on the label, I would say, which is interesting because it doesn't really come with like a little diatribe like most anarcho bands come with, like a fold out that have all kinds of like, you know, protest type, you know, just dabs and doodles and stuff. But this one only came with a t-shirt ad. So yeah, this one has some merchandising in it. Interesting. A similar insert came in a couple of records. You can find them in. So yeah, that is Blitzkrieg, Oi number 8. And that should be mentioned too. All of the No Future catalog numbers start with Oi. So, okay, so number 9. So this was April of 1982. The Violators, Gangland. This record is one of my favorites on the label, actually. And this was another band that they picked up off of Country Fit for Heroes. And this band is also from New Mills. And they shared a practice space with Blitz. So there's kind of a little, you know, incestual thing here with New Mills and No Future. But yeah, see, this one comes with the same t-shirt sales thingy. So this band is really, really interesting. So this band is kind of the first one that kind of diverts a little bit, like in their sound, from traditional Oi UK82 second wave punk. These guys have some, and gal have some post-punk influence, and it actually comes out really cool because it's like a definitely, you know, the rhythm section of this band was very rough and like kind of, you know, skinhead Oi sounding, but they had this like really haunting female vocal over some of it. And yeah, I really love the way this band mixes their influences together. So there was only one pressing of this, and so there's 2 songs, The Fugitive and Gangland. Gangland, I believe, is about the Warriors. At least I think it is from listening to the movie The Warriors. At least listening to the lyrics, I don't know how it couldn't be about that. So yeah, that is Violators, number 9. Outstanding record. Oh, and I forgot to talk about this. So after every record that I do, I want to talk about, after every band's last release on the label, I want to talk about other ways to get the music that they did. So we'll just skip back to Blitzkrieg right quick. So this is a Blitzkrieg collection that was released recently. This was on Puke and Vomit Records. You can see there. This is pretty cool. This has the Country Fit for Heroes track. It has the 7-inch we just talked about. It has their other 7-inch from 1983, and then it has some live stuff on the B-side from the period, so 82 to 83. And then it comes with a bunch of cool stuff. So comes a little insert with the story and pictures and all that good stuff. It's actually interesting. Oh, homeboy here is kind of a little skinned out there. Just a little. It comes with a poster too. So this is a cool release. I want to talk about all these kind of things when we go through this, because there's, you know, these kind of collection releases are just a great bang for your buck, because you get pretty much every song that the band did on No Future. If I talk about it here, it includes everything they did on No Future, and in some cases it includes their entire discography from the era, like this one does. So these are really cool to have, and yeah, so going forward I'll be trying to remember to talk about these after the band's last release on the label. Okay, so next release. Number 10. This was also April of 1982, and this was the Insane El Salvador. So this band is interesting. They're great, but they're also interesting because this is the only band that would appear on both No Future and Riot City. So we're going to do another video on Riot City. But this band was actually, they existed in 2 different lineups playing at the same time, which is kind of interesting. So I guess they had like a split between members, and some members didn't get along, so they both kept the name and started different bands with the same name. I think this, I'm not sure if this happened before or after that. I think this was before, I don't know. But yeah, so this record is really good. So there was only one press of this. They actually do a Johnny Thunders cover on here, which I've had people who like Johnny Thunders tell me that this is the worst cover ever, but I love it. So yeah, this record is really good. You know, El Salvador and Nuclear War, their 2 original songs on here, are great. So yeah. Just other white labels, and we were still on the card type material at this point, so And this band also, I believe, does it say on here? Yeah, so this record includes David Bambi Ellesmere. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He had a little prolific career during this time. So he played in Discharge, he played on the Y EP, which is like, you know, a genre-defining record. And then he also was in Flux of Pink Indians, who were, you know, they're one of the staples of the anarcho scene. So if you're into that, he was actually in both those bands and this band. And I believe he was in a lot of these bands at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, so next we have, oh, and interestingly enough, there's no collection for this band. No one's ever done like a singles collection, demos collection on albums, so someone needs to get on that. This band's great. Okay, anyways, so on to number 11. So this is another interesting release. So this is the only American band that was on No Future. This came out, there was only one press of this, and it came out in June of 1982. So technically this isn't really a No Future release. It's kind of sort of a reissue of this band's debut EP, which was a 12-inch right here. So basically they took 2 songs, I think, or they took 1 song off of this. They took Waiting off, and they released the other 3 songs that are on this as a 7-inch EP for whatever reason. I don't know why they didn't just do all 4 songs. I, you know, can only speculate, but this record actually, for being an American band, it really fits with the British style. Like, I think these guys definitely listen to a lot of British 77 punk, like a lot of the British punks did. I think maybe more than most American bands did, because this band really has, I mean, it's a little surfy too, you know, it's got a little Agent Orange type of feel to it, so you can definitely tell it's American and from California by that, but I mean, it's definitely got a British feel to it. And I think it took me a long time before I actually realized Channel 3 were American and not British, because I've always been so heavy to this type of stuff. I think this is the first way I heard them was through the No Future thing. So yeah, they were actually they were from California, and they actually went on to do albums, and they actually had some more records on No Future. They had an album, so we'll talk about that when we get to the albums. This also has never been reissued, which I guess makes sense because all the songs are on that other thing, which I believe that's been reissued. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but okay, so number 12. This is, I don't want to say this is the quintessential release on the label, but it might be. This was the Partisans' second release, and I mean, it's really self-explanatory. 17 Years of Hell, you tell exactly how old they were when this came out. So this would be their second of 3 releases, and it would be their final single release on No Future. And we'll talk more about that in the album. But this has 3 of probably my favorite songs they ever did in their whole career. 17 Years of Hell, Power and the Greed, and Bastards in Blue. There was only one press of this, and this was also June of '82, so there's the label there. Yeah, I mean, there's just not much even to say about this one. I mean, it's just outstanding. It's very similar to the second Blitz release. It's just like balls to the wall. Like, they got a lot more production value in on this one than they did on the first one. I think it's just a more whole sounding release. You know, it doesn't sound rushed or like it was a demo or they weren't sure if it was going to come out or anything like that. This record is just great. So, okay, so that was number 12. So number 13, or actually before we do that, see, I almost forgot. We'll talk about this record. So, God, I hate this cover. So this cover just, like, I'm embarrassed even showing it. But this is a singles collection that was released. I mean, God, what is going on here? I don't even know. But this has the 2 No Future singles on it, and it also has their compilation tracks from Carry On Oi, which came out around the same time, and then it has their third single, their third 80s single, I should say. And yeah, so this comes with a horrible cover, and it comes with a poster of the horrible cover. I don't even know why I bought this, to be honest with you. The cover is so bad. Well, it sounds good, I should say. I shouldn't shit on it too bad. It sounds great. It's cool to have everything on one record, and it's the only Partisans singles collection that's available. So I don't know, and it's on, oh yeah, it's on blue. I'll show you blue. So, yep, on blue. I mean, it sounds good. It's, you know, if you just ignore the cover and the title, I mean, it should be the Partisans singles 81 to 83. You put a picture of the Partisans on the cover, you know, come on, guys. Anyways, on to number 13. So number 13 is another Red Alert record. So this is Take No Prisoners. This, I think, is probably their best release from the era. So this was July of 82. There was only one pressing of this. 3 songs: Take No Prisoners, Empire Crime, Sell Out. Yep, only one press of this. This was on white labels. This record again, like, went really high in the indie charts. I think this made in the top 10. So it's pretty cool for just, you know, a little punk band to be getting that kind of sales at this time. Was pretty cool. Yeah, so Red Alert, Take No Prisoners, number 13. Okay, number 14. So this is a big one. This is my favorite release on the label. This was also July of 1982. There was only one press of this. I believe this is when we start getting into the paper. Yeah, so this is like a more of a paper material than, so I don't know, maybe it's safe to say that around the middle of 1982 is when they started doing the paper sleeve. So the first Blitz, or the third press of Blitz, probably came out around this time, if I had to guess. So this band was also on A Country Fit for Heroes. They had done a 7-inch before this, a self-release 7-inch. It came with like a book. It's actually pretty expensive. It's a rare one. I don't have a copy of it to show, but it's amazing how much they improved musically between that record and this record. Like, it doesn't even sound like the same band almost. This record is just so polished. It's so great. I mean, they should have had an album on this label. I mean, this is their only release on the label, actually. So that first release only came with I think was only 1,000 copies, if I'm not mistaken. And Chris Berry, who ran No Future, he also actually managed these guys. So that's kind of bizarre that this band was only did one release, and they were managed by the label boss. And as good as they were, they had some demos that were great. I mean, this band is so good. So this record was actually banned too, because when this came out, it was right when the Falklands War started, and the music press thought that this was about the dead soldiers from the Falklands, and they had to put out a press release saying no, it was written about World War I, way before the Falklands War even happened. But they were in a little hot water about that. So yeah, that's this one. I think there was also an insert, a promo insert that came with this, which mine's obviously missing. Again, the No Future inserts there. This was also repressed, I believe, recently by Mad Butcher. So how I found out about this band was in the 90s. There was a split CD that was done by Captain Oi, which had this band and Crux, who we're going to talk about in a minute. And it was like their singles and demos, and it was a split CD. So that's how I found out about these guys, and Crux for that matter. But yeah, so great band. for the samples, they do have this. So this is the demos and singles from Vomito Punk. This is a great record to have. So this has everything they did on No Future. So it has the Government Downfall song from A Country Fit for Heroes. It has the Dead Hero 7-inch, and then it has various demos from the period. Oh, and it has the original 7-inch I was talking about. And then it comes with this whole fold-out poster that has the history of the band, and it folds out actually into a cool poster, unlike that other record, see? So, and this was on red. We'll show that too. It's like a slightly translucent red. This is great to have. I love this kind of stuff because it's like a one-stop shop. I can just put this on and I can hear everything the samples did from the early 80s. Okay, so that's the samples. All right, now we're on to Oi number 15. And we are back to Peter and Test Tube Babies. So there was 2 versions of this. This came out in, again, July of 1982. This one's a little torched, actually. I mean, as typical, you know. I got pretty lucky with most of these records. They're in pretty good shape, but this is like pretty typical. I mean, people, they played these records back in the day when they came out. So there was 2 versions of this. There was a UK press with the black labels, and then there was a New Zealand press with yellow labels. And there's an interesting thing with No Future where they had a number of New Zealand pressings, which we'll talk about, and you know, as we go forward. But so this is Peter and Test Tube's second release. The Test Tubes are they're great, and they're just silly and lighthearted, and it's just a good time band, you know, and they still play to this day. So, and again, this is kind of more floppy paper. So with that said, this would be Peter and Test Tube Babies' final single release on No Future. They would still do more No Future releases, but this is their final single. So with that, we'll talk about this Peter and Test Tube Babies Punk Singles Collection. So this is pretty cool to have. This was done by Radiation Records out of Italy. And this has pretty much everything they did, including, I believe, actually, I don't think, no, it doesn't have the Oi. So that, I guess if I had to knock on it, it would be that it doesn't include the compilation tracks. But this has it has both of their No Future singles included on it. And I think this goes all the way until about 1986. So that's a good release to have too. Again, you know, just throw it on and listen to everything. Okay, so next, number 16 is Blitz Warriors. So this is a great release, and this actually was the first release that actually kind of went out, and they did a bunch of presses of this. So they did 2 different UK versions and 2 different New Zealand versions of this. So this was the 3rd release from Blitz. It's got the lyrics on the back there, along with this iconic Blitz logo. So this would be the final Blitz release with the original lineup. After this, single release with the original lineup. And actually, there's an interesting anecdote about the cover of this. So if you notice on the cover, Carl is dressed like in a droog fashion, and I guess this was the only time he ever wore this, and he ended up on the cover of this and on the cover of Sounds magazine dressed like that, and he was like super embarrassed. I guess I read that in a book, but I found that funny that he just threw that outfit on one day, and it was on all these iconic, you know, records and magazines and stuff. So right around this time, Blitz had 1 track on this. So this was Total Noise number 1. I know I'm kind of diverting here, but it's kind of relevant. So this was a compilation. It was supposed to be a series, but they only ended up doing 1 of them. And this was done by Gary Bushell, and it has Blitz, The Business, The Gonads, and Dead Generation, which is just the Cockney Rejects under a different name. But this has a special version of Voice of a Generation on it that's not on anywhere else. And in Burning Britain, Nidge talks about how this was his preferred version of that song. So if you never heard it, I would try to listen to it because that's what Nidge preferred. I like the album version better, but that's just me. Okay, so moving on to Oi 17. Or no, not moving on. Sorry. So that was the last Blitz single on No Future Records proper. They would have more singles in the 80s, technically on No Future, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So we'll talk about these Blitz singles collections. So these are cool to have, both of them. This first one is from the 90s, and it's on Captain Oi. It's just on black labels there. So this has pretty much everything they did in the 80s, including their kind of weird new romantic, new wave era down here, but it has all the No Future stuff. This also has the other version of Voice of a Generation on it, so this is pretty cool to have. This has been reissued, I believe, as well. It's got the insert, it has all the covers on it, and then it has just a list of their releases at that time. So yeah, this is cool to have again, just to put on and have everything. And then this is a more recent release. This is, I think, this is from 2010s or something. I forget. This is on Radiation, like that Peter and Test Tube Babies one. This is pretty cool because this has some of Blitz's early demos on it, and it has some demos they did for the album of new songs. I like this a lot too. This is good to have. But this doesn't have the compilation tracks like that one does. So you kind of, if you're like me, you want both. Because they both have, the cover on this is great too. It's just very stark. Okay. So, next we're going to talk about Murder in the Subway by Attack. So this is Oi number 17, and this was September of 1982. And this was also done in multiple countries. There was a UK version, which this is, and then there was a New Zealand press, or two New Zealand presses. Yeah, and this, you could see this, the paper is getting thinner and thinner as the years go on, and the money was becoming scarcer and scarcer. So, yep, this record, I mean, is iconic. You know, the cover is iconic too. I mean, I don't know how many shirts of that I've had over the years. So there's the labels. So also around this time, they were on a compilation. They were on the third, I believe it's the third Oi compilation. They had a song, Big Brother, on that. Great song. Probably my favorite song of theirs, actually. This record was, they sold a lot of these too. This was another really popular record. Although I like the first one better. This is a little more polished. You can see they were getting a little better at writing music and stuff, but I like the first one, just the pure raw, the rawness of the first one. I mean, I love this one too, obviously, but all right. So with that, we are going to talk about another one of my favorites. So we're going to talk about the Crux and Crash split. So this is a split record that came out in, well, actually, before I go into this, so this was November of 1982. In October of 1982, No Future really blew their load on doing LPs. So they did the first Blitz album in October. So there was no singles in October, and then it wouldn't be until November that we would get this one. They also released the Channel 3 album I talked about earlier. So the Channel 3 album and the Blitz album came out in October, and then by November we got this one. So November 1982 sees one of my favorites on the release, on No Future, is the Crux and Crash split. So these were supposed to be released, I believe, independently, and again, I was saying that, you know, the money was getting tighter by this time, so they started combining releases. And it's interesting, this is actually like a 7-inch type sleeve. Like it's not an LP sleeve, you know, there's no, and it's a little smaller too, if you notice. It's about the size of an inner sleeve, so that's interesting. So at the end of 1982, really, you know, they were starting to, the releases weren't selling as good as the early ones, and they were kind of heading down a little bit. I wouldn't, they definitely weren't done, but it was just, it started going that direction. So this was a split between Crux and Crash. Crux is one of my favorite bands of the era, actually. Definitely on the label. So this was actually two brothers, the McGrath brothers, and they started this band in 1980, I believe. Yeah, and they did, they also were originally featured on A Country Fit for Heroes, and they also were on one of the Oi albums, I believe. So, actually, and I believe a third brother ended up joining the band too. So this band was basically three brothers and the singer, I think. So, or the singer was one of the brothers. I forget. It's been a while. But yeah, this record is just outstanding. On the other side was Crash. And this is a bit of a mystery band. This is their only release. They actually released this by themselves as a 7-inch, and it's really rare. It had no cover or anything, and they released that in 1981, I think. So this is this side is a reissue technically of that. This is outstanding. I wish I knew more about this band. They're just so good. Like, I wonder if they have demos or anything. Yeah, but you could see, you know, people just look cooler back then. They got pictures, so you can see they kind of combined everything that would have been on a full, like the front of the sleeve and then all this on the back. They just kind of put it all on one, really, you know, on one sleeve and released it. So that's pretty cool. There's only one pressing of this. This one is one of the more expensive releases on the label. This is like getting close to $100. I think I paid $75 for this. That's kind of like a, you know, $7,500 for this one. That's one of the more expensive ones. Okay, so now with that said, we'll talk about this. There's no Crash collection or compilation or anything. There's only those 4 songs as far as I know, but Crux had some demos and stuff. So some of those compilation songs I was talking about earlier, they're on this. So this is pretty much everything Crux did, demo and single and compilation wise. And it comes with a cool insert. It actually has a repress of an interview they did in Sounds here. So May 21st, 1983. And it's got a cool picture of them on there. This is also done by Vomito, who did that samples collection. This one's pretty cool. Here, I'll show this. It actually is on like a split. Pretty cool. Yeah, I play this one a lot because it's got everything you need on it. Okay, so that is Crux Crash. So that was number 18. So number 19 is another Violators record, and this would probably be the quintessential Violators release. This was like, this has their 2 most popular songs on it. This has Summer of 81 and Live Fast Die Young. Live Fast Die Young is, I think I first heard of it because the Devotchkas covered it in the 90s, but yeah, that song's been covered by many people, and Summer of 81's been covered many times too. So this actually, there was 2 versions of this. There was this version that's on this, here, I'll actually pull this one out, because this one has injection molded labels, which is a departure. So there's a red version of this with the injection molded labels, and then there's a paper one with black and white paper labels, which I don't have. I only have this one. So this was the final release of 1982. This was also in November of 1982. And it was also the final Violators release on No Future Records proper. They would have one more record technically released on No Future, which we will talk about at the end of this video. So, okay, next. So just before we move on, we'll talk about these. So that was the last Violators release. So we'll talk about these. Actually, I'm wrong. There's one more Violators release. Well, we'll talk about these now, because the last one isn't technically a new release. So there's this. This is also on Vomito. This one is actually numbered. They only made 300 of these. That's pretty cool. There was another press of this too. So this is all their singles on this. And there's some live from October 1982. These last songs are. Yeah, this is cool, and it's got the whole history of the band and all that stuff and releases. It actually mentions this here, which I wish I had a copy of this. I'm still looking for that. That's a bootleg, and it has the Violators live on one side, and then it has Blitz demos on the other side. And this is on a cool, clear platter. So that's cool to have. So that's the one option for a Violators collection. And then this is the other one, and this was released, I think, more recently. This was a CD, I think, originally when it came out. This was also done by Puke and Vomit. This is really cool because this has it has the original No Future releases. Then it has this 7-inch, which we're going to talk about, which was on the Future Records label, which is like a subsidiary of No Future. And then at the end, it has these tracks by Taboo, who was the original vocalist. That's her band after she left the Violators. So while the Violators did this later one, Taboo was going simultaneously. They never put a record out or anything, so this is the only place I believe you can find these songs is on here. And this comes with some cool stuff like a poster and insert. So yeah, that's cool. There's some different versions of this on other colors and stuff like that too, if you're interested. Okay. So with that, now we move on to Red Alert. So Red Alert, this was their third, I believe it's their third record on No Future, so their fourth record overall. And yeah, these are two great songs too on here. City Invasion, Negative Reaction. This is Oi number 20, and this is 1983, January this came out. See, with this, now this is interesting because this is back on like a card type material. I only did one press of this, and it was on this black paper label. So yeah. It also is kind of funny, they have the same picture of them from the first EP on the back. I think they were just cutting corners at this point, because this is really, 1983 was kind of when the label started going downhill a little bit. Okay, so this next one is very interesting. So that was Oi 20, and this one is 0221. So this is actually two releases with the same catalog number. So it's an album and a single. They both have the same catalog number of 0221. So it does come in line after that, but I believe this was released after some of the later ones we're going to talk about. But so it's really kind of redundant release. I don't really know what was going on with this one. There's also a Spanish release of this too, which is weird. It's the only No Future that had a Spanish release. So you have the 7-inch, which is just 4 songs off of the 12-inch, and yeah, it's just odd. This band actually had started out, and they had done albums on their own. Like this is their first album, Personal Troubles and Public Issues. Yeah, I believe this was 1980 this came out. Yeah, 1980 this was. So this band had been around, and they had done a lot of lineup changes, and a lot of other people had come and gone, and this would be their last release of the 80s, and it was really only the drummer and the bass player. The drummer sang, he played guitar, and he played the drums on this. So this was basically a studio record, and I think they played only one show after this came out. And you know, it's just weird. They didn't really do, you know, a real LP sleeve or anything. It's like the Crux. It's just a, you know, it's just a floppy paper. It's like a giant 7-inch sleeve, basically. It's all that said, it's a good record. It has a Beatles cover on it, and it has a Slade cover on it, and they're both pretty cool. I like this record a lot. It's just odd. It doesn't seem like they put much effort into it, which I guess if they were basically on the outs as a band, makes sense. But it's just interesting also because they didn't want to be associated with Oi at all. So on this record, they took Oi off and they put O2 instead. So just kind of interesting. Which is actually kind of funny because the drummer of this band, after the Wall, he would go on to do a record label of his own called RFB Recordings, which did Condemned 84 records, which is like, you know, as Oi as you can get. So I don't know why they were afraid of being associated with Oi here, but then later on he went to play or to put out some, like, you know, the most Oi records you could, which is Condemned 84. And yeah, so this is him right here. Rab Fay Baith, I think is his name. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He was from Scotland originally, I think. And he would also join the UK subs, and he would end up putting out some UK subs records as well. So there's that. Okay, so the next one, this is another one of my favorites. So this is The Blood, Megalomania. This was the only release that they would do on No Future, and apparently Chris Berry said they were like just a nightmare to deal with because they were just crazy. But this band is probably the most unique sounding on the label. They're really like UK82, but they have some hard rock, heavy metal, like really good lead guitars. Yeah, just this is a great record, and the lyrics are outstanding too. Just really well thought out, and yeah, it's just great. So they were actually managed by Gary Bushell, so the music journalist from that time. And there's the injection molded label on these, which are more common by this time for whatever reason. So this is their debut. The Blood would go on to do more releases, but this is the only release they ever did on No Future. It has a piano in it. It's kind of like, you know, if you describe this record to people, they're like, that probably sucks, but no, it's awesome. Yeah, it's just great. So with that, we'll go into a couple of, so there's two collections of The Blood here. This first one is a single disc, and it was done by Puke and Vomit. So this has their Compilation and their No Future EP, as well as their Stark Raving Normal EP, and then it has some demos and outtakes on it as well. And this comes with, again, with, like, you know, an insert. It folds out, and it has liner notes by Gary Bushell in it. It's pretty cool. This is a good release. I like this a lot. And there's something else in here. What's this? Poster, I guess? Got a poster. Pretty cool. Again, good stuff to have, you know. So with that said, move on to this other Blood collection. So this is a little more extensive. This is actually 2 discs. And it's a gatefold, I think. Or no, it's not a gatefold, but it comes with the poster. So this has basically everything they did other than their first album. So this has their 2 7-inches they did, their 12-inch they did from 1985. It has compilation songs, demos, So this is pretty much everything other than their first album, False Gestures for a Devious Public. And it comes with this really cool poster too. So this is definitely a good option for anyone looking to try to complete all the Blood recordings. Okay, so we're nearing the end now, and we're on A Country Fit for Heroes Volume 2. So again, we're just kind of going to touch on this, and then we'll talk about it in the other video on actual albums and compilations. So this one is Volume 2, and again, it's just a bunch of bands that they had got demo tapes of, and they thought were good enough to put out. So none of these bands would end up getting their own No Future release. Some of these bands went on to do more, some did not. This one actually came with a insert for, it's just like an information insert on the biggest bands on the label. But this is another great record, and we'll talk more about all these bands in detail in the other video when we do a deep dive on compilations. But there's some really good stuff on here, specifically this Cadaverous Clan song. That band was outstanding. They should have gave them at least a 7-inch. They were related to Verruchers and Sacrilege. So yeah, Country Fit for Heroes Volume 2. This was number 23, and this was March of 1983. So yeah. And I believe there was actually other presses of this. This is the version on the UK version with the white labels. There was a New Zealand press and a Scandinavian press of that as well. Okay, so next we have Rose of Victory. So this is an interesting record, being that this is actually half of Blitz. So in 1982, Blitz split in half, and Nidge and Mackie were supposed to continue on the punk style of Blitz with the name. They would keep the name and keep the style, and then the other two, Charlie and Carl, would take, they wanted to go more of a new romantic style, so they would take that sound somewhere else and get a new name. What ended up happening was they kept the name Blitz and ended up pissing everyone off by releasing a bunch of records that nobody who liked Blitz wanted to hear, where Nidge and Mackie did this 7-inch. So this was supposed to be a band that was going to actually carry on the torch of Blitz, but they only ended up doing this one record. And it's got a David Bowie song on one side, and Suffragette City. And on the other side is just an instrumental called Overdrive, which is very, you could tell it's very Buzzcocksy. It's definitely a Manchester sounding song. So this record's good. The vocals on this are actually by the producer, I believe. So they didn't have someone to sing, so they just had, the guy that was in the engineer in there that was helping them record it. They just had him sing on it. So this is a cool record though. It's not, it's definitely not Blitz, but it sounds good, and I throw it on every once in a while. So the B-side is, or the B-side, the song Overdrive is really good. It really reminds me of Walking Distance by the Buzzcocks. It's just like a instrumental kind of 77 punk number. It's good. I like it. So that was number 24, and that was July of 1983. Okay, so the next one is number 25, and this is a 12-inch. It's an EP, 12-inch EP, but it's by the Screaming Dead, which is another departure. This was kind of the only gothy, and when I say goth, I mean like the classic 80s goth. I don't mean like Marilyn Manson 90s goth stuff. Like, this is the original, punk adjacent goth. This record's great. I love this record, actually. It's 5 songs, and it's just, you could see the aesthetic is unlike anything else that's on this label. It's really less, oi, Skinhead punk sound or style, and it's very dark, you know, which I like. It's cool. Not everything needs to be the same. So I guess they had actually had records released. Well, they had their own records released, and they were done on Skull Records, which was technically No Future, but they were licensed through No Future. So we're going to talk about those when we get to the oddities and the weird records that No Future did in the second video. So yeah, this is a great one, and it's by this time No Future started doing 12-inch EPs or 12-inch singles rather than 7-inch singles. Actually, I don't think there's any more 7-inch singles. I think going forward they're all 12-inch singles. But yeah, this is actually also one of the last fully original releases on the Future. Everything else going forward except for one, I think, would have been released elsewhere. So they're just kind of rehashing old stuff, but this was all new recordings for the time. Yeah, so that's that. Okay, next we have the second to last release on No Future, and this is also the rarest release, the Violators 12-inch. So this is a collection of all the Violators tracks, with one exception, which we will talk about. This came out in November of '83. Between November of '83 and 1984, it was tough. I couldn't really find the exact time when this was released, but this is number 26 on the catalog numbers, and this is definitely, without a doubt, the most expensive No Future record to track down. There was two versions of this. There's a black vinyl, which this one is, and then there's a green vinyl, which is excessively rare, and that one is well over $100 if you can find one of those. This one's about $100, and this is in really good shape too, actually. So yeah, this record, I love this record. It's awesome, but it pisses me off to no end because it's missing one song on it. It's missing Live Fast, Die Young. Like, why? And it would be a complete collection of the Violators on No Future had they included that. Like, why didn't they do that? Because I don't know, maybe they wanted to keep people buying that Summer of '81 single. Maybe they didn't want to put an extra song on there, but because then it wouldn't be 3 songs on each side. I don't know what the reason was. I can't think of a good reason not to include it, because it would have been everything. You know, like, why? Why did they not do that? I don't know. Yeah, so I still spent $100 on it, you know, on a record that pisses me off. But yeah, this is a great sounding record because it's on 12-inch. It's a 12-inch 45, so this sounds really good, really good. And that's another reason why it pisses me off that they didn't put that song on there. But whatever. These definitely sound better than the 7-inch version. So there's a reason to get this, or you're just trying to complete the collection, you know. But yeah, this record makes me mad, so. That is number 26. So, number 27. This would be the final release on No Future. And it would be the final Red Alert release of the 80s, I think. I don't think they did anything after this. So, this also came on green or black vinyl. I have the black vinyl version. So, I don't... This record was also a bit of a... Oh, it's actually coming apart here. I need to reglue that. So, this record was kind of a departure for the band. 6 songs. It's kind of weird. I don't know. For Red Alert, who are traditionally just more straight ahead oi, this record is definitely like outside of their. It's a bit of an oddball in their releases. All the Way to Glory is a great song on here. It's just the production on this. It's just I don't know what they were really going for. I guess it was the end of No Future. Even the cover's just kind of like they just stuck a bunch of pictures and put the title there. It wasn't as you know, interesting as the earlier ones. So yeah, you know, it's cool to have. I don't really listen to this much though. I like a lot of their other stuff more. So that is actually the last single release on No Future, would be that one. So with that, we'll talk about the Red Alert Oi Singles Collection. So this has everything they did in the 80s, including that rare 7-inch, the Border Guard 7-inch, so that's on here. And also some demos and alternate versions on it, so this is cool to have. This was on Common People Records. There's a rare version of this on white, I think. So it's got all the lyrics, and yeah, this is good to have too. I'm a big fan of these kind of singles collections. This one's very well done. Okay, so before we wrap this up, we'll talk about future records. So these three are three examples I have. So in 1983, Chris Berry decided to change direction off of No Future's punk side, and he was running both labels simultaneously, but he was running Future Records, which he would try to, you know, take this in a new direction with the whole, at the time it was like called New Romantic Futurist synth pop sound. It's definitely a departure from the punk that they were putting out. A lot of people pretend like they like these records more than the punk stuff, which, you know, hey, teach their own, but I don't know how you can like this Blitz over the earlier Blitz. But with that said, this actually is the original, this is the original Blitz sound. So this still had Nidge in it, but if you remember in the beginning, we talked about Tim Harris, who was the engineer on earlier Blitz records. Mackie would leave the band after their tour with GBH, and they had Tim Harris join the band, and with him they did this record, and this record is absolutely outstanding. I mean, New Age is one of the, I mean, if you're talking about Blitz, like that's one of the Blitz songs, and Fatigue is, I mean, that might be their best song ever as far as I'm concerned. Bleed is just a remix, that's on the album. This is, you could tell where stuff was getting really weird. And also with the covers, like they're supposed to be like this minimalist, weird style. I don't know. I mean, like what were they doing here? It's like you can put a picture or nothing. It's just super boring. I don't know. But that's kind of, you know, was what that whole, it really was a different subculture that they thought was going to kind of take off, but it didn't really go too far. This is completely different. This is when Nidge was doing Rose of Victory. So this was Tim Harris, Charlie, and Carl. And I think it was the three of them. I don't know if there was anyone else on this record. I'm not sure. But this is total synth pop, you know, sound. This is not the punk Blitz. It's okay for what it is. It's just like, it should have been the other way. The Nidge should have kept the name, and they should have went the other way. But they nailed what they were going for. I'll give it that. I feel a little differently about this record. So this is the Violators record that they put out on Future. This would be their last record, and this is included on those collections. But this has a different female singer on it. But this record I really like, actually, a lot more than the Blitz one. Anyway. The rhythm section really retained the power of the earlier records on this, and it's definitely not like there's not really like an electronic sound to this. This is more, it's weird. These kind of labels don't really exist anymore. Like when I say it sounds futurist, like it's not really a thing. It's like new wavy, I guess would be the way to describe it to make people understand what you're saying. But I do like it though. I do like this one. This record, absolutely essential. This came in a 7-inch also, but the 12-inch sounds, I mean, it sounds like you're in the room. This sounds so good. So I would definitely try to track this down. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up, but we'll end on this note of these two. So there's two singles collections here. There's 2 volumes, I should say. So these were done by Captain Oi in the 1990s. I think these were from 95. I don't think it says on here. Early mid-90s these were put out. So this isn't the entire singles collection between both of them, but it's damn near, it's the majority of the stuff that we just talked about on 2 records. And then it has little blurbs about each release in here. It's actually kind of interesting. This is Pauline and Foss from the band Potential Threat are in here, who are not a No Future band. They were just a UK82 kind of rookers band. So I don't know, it's kind of funny that they're just in here. I guess they just picked a random picture of punks that they found and stuck it in there, but it's kind of funny that there's little connections like that. So this has like all the big songs on it. So this has, you know, Blitz, Someone's Gonna Die, Partisans, Police Story. Like this has a lot of the really big songs, but it has some, you know, 17 Years of Hell. This also has some lesser known songs on it. And then volume 2 has more obscure stuff. And they also include tracks from the 2 compilations on these. So, which I kind of think they shouldn't have, because I know the compilations are technically in the singles, and you see it's the same picture inside. The compilations technically are in the singles collection, but they're compilation albums. You know, I think they should have left these off and just included the singles, and then they would have probably been able to fit every single on here. So yeah, and then this has a lot of the lesser known, or not lesser known, but just the not as popular songs on the B-side, or on the second volume, I should say. So these 2 collections are really cool to have. I put these on all the time when I'm just doing, you know, random stuff and I just want some background noise. Doing stuff around the house or whatever. These are awesome to have because they just, I mean, it's everything you need on 4 records, you know? Most everything you need on 4 records. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense. And hopefully I'll get a little better at doing these as time goes on. So the next video will be on No Future albums, and it'll be on No Future albums, compilations, and then like the weird stuff that they did for split releases and stuff. Also real quick, I just want to mention the references I used to make this. So obviously there's Ian Glasper's Burning Britain, which is like the UK82 Bible. I mean, there's a lot of information in this. This he just released. I didn't really use this because this just came out, but this is a lot of the lesser known bands. I mean, there's bands in here I've never even heard of, and there's some outstanding pictures, and man, it's huge. It's crazy. This one about the more popular bands is like nothing, and this one is just, so that's really cool to have. And then I use these, these are from the New Rose Publishing, and they did a bunch of different books. So they did this, Here Comes the New Punk. This is like sort of an encyclopedia on, yeah, see, here's the Blood and Blitz. This is great to have. I mean, this had invaluable information in it. And then When the Punks Go Marching In, this is kind of the same thing. That other one is more Oi Skinhead related, and this is more just UK82, like spiky punk related. So there's that, and then there's these, which are really, really cool. These are scrapbooks, and these just have clippings from sounds and other music papers, Melody Maker, all that kind of stuff. And it's just all, I mean, again, invaluable information, you know, for this time period and these bands. Now, with that said, a lot of the information is kind of contradictory to itself, because I think a lot of people weren't really thinking of like documenting this era or these kinds of bands when they were in them, you know? So a lot of the pressing information I didn't really put in here because it's different in some of these books. Like some books will say, oh, we pressed 10,000 of this and it sold, you know, 5,000 in the first week, and then others, the numbers are completely different. So it's tough. In this though, this actually does include the release the release months. So this is how I was able to find out what month they were released in. But again, it wasn't exactly the same, so I kind of had to guess a little bit. So, well, hopefully the next video will be a little bit less drawn out and a little better. So, all right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.